Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Public Service Commission of South Carolina. We're here for an annual review of purchase gas adjustment and gas purchasing policies of Piedmont Natural Gas. Before we begin, please join me in a moment of silence. All right, thank you very much. We're going to take roll. Present in the hearing room, we have Commissioners Thomas, Powers, Belzer, C. Williams, and J. Williams. Joining us virtually, we have Commissioner Caston, and Commissioner Irvin is on annual leave. General Counsel Wessinger Hill.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, and parties and counselors. This morning, this is the South Carolina Public Service Commission who will hear today docket number 2021-4-G, which is the annual review of the purchase gas adjustment and gas purchasing policies of Piedmont Natural Gas Company, Incorporated.
General Counsel Wessinger Hill.
Yes, sir.
Let's hold 1 second. For some reason or another, the camera is not on you. It's still on me, and I know you all enjoy looking at me. My parents did a pretty good job.
We do.
But let's get that camera on you. There we go. That's much better.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
We could have done without that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Okay. This hearing was duly noticed today for Thursday, July the 15th, to begin at 10 a.m. The parties and the witnesses are all present virtually, and Chairman Williams, the docket is in order.
Thank you very much, General Counsel Wessinger Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Parties, let's take appearances. Piedmont Natural Gas Company.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jim Jeffries. I'm with the law firm of McGuire Woods, and I am here today on behalf of Piedmont Natural Gas Company. Along with me, appearing for Piedmont, are lawyer Rich McPherson, and Mindy McGrath is on as well. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today.
Absolutely, sir. Happy to have you and your team with us. Let's move on to the Office of Regulatory Staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Leslie Hammonds with the Office of Regulatory Staff. Along with me today is Mr. Jeff Nelson.
All right. Attorney Hammonds, Attorney Nelson, happy to have you all with us today. Parties, are there any preliminary matters that we need to address before the first witness is called?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I would like to introduce the settlement agreement. As you are aware, a settlement agreement has been executed between Piedmont Natural Gas and ORS in this matter and was filed with the Commission on June 22nd. As part of the settlement, the parties have agreed to stipulate into the record without objection or cross-examination the pre-filed testimony and exhibits of each witness. We ask that the settlement agreement filed on June 22nd be marked for identification and entered into the record as the first hearing exhibit.
All right. Thank you, Attorney Hammonds. Attorney Jeffries, obviously, based on your signature to the settlement agreement, you would agree and not object?
We would not object, and we would second that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. All right. The settlement agreement in docket number 2021-4G will be marked and entered into the record as hearing exhibit 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all from ORS at this time.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. Attorney Jeffries, are you ready to call your first witness?
We are, Mr. Chairman. Piedmont would call Miss Mary Beth Tomlinson to the stand.
Miss Mary Beth Tomlinson, if you would, ma'am, take the stand. Pause for a brief second to allow our court reporter to swear you in.
Ms. Tomlinson, if you would raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Tomlinson, could you please state your name and business address for the record, please?
My name is Mary Beth Tomlinson. My business address is 4720 Piedmont Road Drive, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28210.
And who do you work for, Ms. Tomlinson?
I'm the manager of natural gas, Piedmont's natural gas. My responsibilities include recording the cost of gas on Piedmont's books, maintaining a proper match of revenues and cost of gas on Piedmont's income statements, verifying volumes and prices on invoices related to the purchase and transportation of natural gas, and recording gas inventory accounts and deferred accounts.
Thank you, Ms. Tomlinson. Are you the same Mary Beth Tomlinson that pre-filed testimony on June 2nd, 2021, consisting of 3 pages and exhibits MBT1 and MBT2?
Yes, I am.
And was that testimony prepared by you or under your direction?
Yes, it was.
Do you have any corrections to that pre-filed testimony?
No, I do not.
Ms. Tomlinson, if I ask you the same questions that are set forth in your direct pre-filed testimony while you're on the stand today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, Piedmont would ask that Ms. Tomlinson's pre-filed testimony be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand, and that her exhibits MBT1 and MBT2 be identified as marked.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Mary Beth Tomlinson's pre-filed direct testimony will be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand, and Ms. Tomlinson's exhibits marked MBT1 and MBT2 will be marked as such and entered into the record as a composite exhibit, and that is hearing exhibit number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Tomlinson, have you prepared a summary of your pre-filed testimony?
Yes, I have.
Could you please provide that to the commission, please?
Yes, I will. Good morning. My name is Mary Beth Tomlinson, and I'm the manager of gas accounting for Piedmont Natural Gas Company. I pre-filed direct testimony and exhibits in this proceeding on June 2nd, 2021. The purpose of my direct testimony is to describe Piedmont's gas cost and hedging plan accounting data and end-of-period balances for the review period, which is April 1st, 2020 through March 31st, 2021 in this proceeding. Pursuant to prior commission directives, Piedmont maintains a gas cost deferred account in which it records on a monthly basis its gas cost expenses, amounts of gas costs recovered, and deferrals. For this review period, Piedmont's end-of-period balance in the purchased gas deferred account was an overcollection of $2,389,099.67. The ORS has conducted an audit of the entries to Piedmont's gas cost deferred account relevant to the review period in this proceeding. A summary of the monthly activity in Piedmont's gas cost deferred account is attached to my testimony as Exhibit MBT-1. Piedmont also maintains a hedging account in which it records the expenses, gains, and losses associated with its hedging plan. ORS also reviewed and audited this account activity as part of this proceeding. A summary of the activity in this account is attached to my testimony as MBT-2. No issues were discovered in the ORS audit of Piedmont's gas cost deferred account and hedging account. Accordingly, on June 22nd, 2021, Piedmont and the ORS filed a settlement agreement with the commission in this docket. That settlement agreement was reached after a full and complete audit by ORS of Piedmont's gas purchasing and gas cost accounting activities for the review period in this proceeding, and direct negotiations between ORS and Piedmont with respect to those activities. The settlement reflects the mutual agreement that 1, Piedmont's gas purchasing policies and practices during the review period were reasonable and prudent. 2, Piedmont properly adhered to the gas cost recovery provisions of its gas tariff and relevant commission orders during the review period. 3, Piedmont managed its hedging plan during the review period in a reasonable and prudent manner consistent with the commission orders. And 4, the end-of-period balances for Piedmont's hedging account and gas cost deferred account are those reflected in my pre-filed direct testimony and exhibits. The Commission's approval of the settlement agreement is in the interest of Piedmont and in the public interest. The settlement agreement is offered by both Piedmont and the ORS as a fair, reasonable, and full resolution of all issues in this proceeding. Piedmont believes that the settlement agreement reached by the parties in this proceeding addresses the concerns of the using and consuming public while preserving the financial integrity of Piedmont. Accordingly, Piedmont recommends that the Commission approve the settlement agreement as filed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tomlinson. Mr. Chairman, Ms. Tomlinson's available for cross-examination or questions from the commission.
All right, commissioner questions.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Thomas.
thank you. So, Ms. Tomlinson,
Good morning.
good morning. Good to see you. There was a big number on your exhibit in connection with supplier refunds of over $3.7 million. And that was back in June of 2020. Can you give us a little bit of a background on what that supplier refund relates to? What caused that?
Sure. That was, we received a $25.5 million refund from Transco as a result of the general rate case settlement. And it was approved by FERC in March of 2020. And then approximately $3.8 million was then allocated to the South Carolina customers.
Okay. So would that been rates they put into effect under bond that were different from the settlement? Is that how that works?
Correct. That's my understanding.
Okay. So are there differences between the three states in the way the GGA is calculated?
Everybody does everything a little bit differently. North Carolina has two different deferred accounts. Definitely differently. The design factor or the allocation that was made to the South Carolina customers is based on a design day factor. And that was a commission order back in 2004 for South Carolina to utilize the North Carolina rate case demand design day allocation for those allocations.
Okay. So basically then there are some differences, and those allocations are there's no overlap. Everything hits one state or the other. Would that be correct?
Using allocations, yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
All right, any other questions for this witness? Vice Chair Belzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Ms.
morning.
Tomlinson. On your MBT Exhibit 1, I just have a question about the line uncollectibles, SC uncollectibles. Are those
Yes.
amounts that customers just haven't paid or haven't been able to pay?
Those are amounts that were written off and the gas costs related to it. Once they collect it, we get to collect those gas costs back. So when the account's written off originally, we write off the gas costs, and then when we collect it, we get to put the gas costs back in.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Any other questions for Ms. Tomlinson? Commissioner Powers.
Good morning, Ms. Tomlinson.
Good morning.
I was just thinking recently, when I was reading all this gas stuff, it's been about 43 years ago, President Jimmy Carter sat in the White House with a cardigan sweater on and told us all to either put the thermostats up or down, depending on the weather, and to really work on conservation. I think everybody laughed at him, and of course now we're in a whole different world, a whole different situation. What sort of, and this is really off the subject, what sort of conservation information or measures do you provide for your customers?
That is not really in my purview since I do the accounting. I think that's probably something I'm going to hunt to either Mr. Patton or Mr. Brees, because they do all of the purchasing for the supply.
Okay, I was just curious. Thank you.
All right. Attorney Jeffries, do you have any redirect?
No redirect, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Ms. Tomlinson, you may step down from the witness stand. Attorney Jeffries, please call your next witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Piedmont would call Mr. Todd Brees to the stand.
Mr. Brees, if you would please take the witness stand and pause to be sworn in by our court reporter.
Mr. Brees, if you would raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Brees, could you state your name and business address for the record, please?
My name is Todd Brees, and my business address is 4720 Piedmont Road Drive, Charlotte, North Carolina.
And you work for Piedmont Natural Gas, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And what position and responsibilities do you have at Piedmont Natural Gas?
I manage the natural gas trading group and supervise the short and long-term purchasing of supply and optimization of pipeline capacity, storage, and supply assets. I also oversee the administration of the company's approved hedging plan.
Thank you. Are you the same Todd Brees that pre-filed testimony in this proceeding on June 2nd, 2021?
Yes.
And that testimony consisted of 18 pages and no exhibits, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And was that testimony prepared by you or under your direction?
Yes.
Do you have any changes to it?
No.
Mr. Brees, if I ask you the same question set forth in your pre-filed testimony while you're on the stand today, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, we'd ask that Mr. Brees' pre-filed testimony be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
All right, Mr. Brees. Mr. Brees's, pre-filed direct testimony will be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
And Mr. Brees, have you also prepared a summary of your testimony?
Yes.
Could you please provide that to the commission?
Yes. Good morning. My name is Todd Brees, and I'm the manager of natural gas trading and optimization for Piedmont Natural Gas Company, Incorporated. I pre-filed direct testimony in this proceeding on June 2nd, 2021. The purpose of my direct testimony is to describe Piedmont's gas purchasing policies and hedging activity during the review period pursuant to the directives contained in Commission Order Number 88-294, dated April 6, 1988. I also discuss Piedmont's review period hedging activity. During the review period, Piedmont continued its use of a best cost approach to purchasing gas. This approach involves 5 components: the price of gas, the security of gas supply, the flexibility of gas supply, gas deliverability, and supplier relationships. Each of these factors is discussed in detail in my testimony. Collectively, these components establish a standard for purchasing gas that has been successfully used by Piedmont for many years. Most of Piedmont's primary gas supplies are purchased under arrangements that are standard in the industry and which involve the payment of reservation fees for firm supplies priced at market-based indices. Piedmont also purchases short-term supplies in the spot market, again at market-based prices, as necessary to meet its customers' needs during non-critical periods. Before purchasing these supplies, Piedmont determines, among other things, the specific need for new supply by engaging in a thorough evaluation of customers' needs, customer usage characteristics, system growth, and available supply options, as described in greater detail by Mr. Patton in his testimony. My testimony explains that during the review period, the company entered into various new supply arrangements consisting of daily swing supply priced at the first of the month index during November through March, daily swing supply priced at the daily market index during November through March, and daily swing supply priced at the daily market index during December through February. My testimony also discusses how the company has taken a number of steps to manage its gas costs consistent with its best cost policy, including actively participating in proceedings before the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, restructuring supply and capacity contracts to adjust to market conditions, and promoting more efficient use of its system and its capacity and commodity rights. In addition, my testimony explains that during the review period, Piedmont continued to utilize its hedging plan as an insurance policy to reduce gas cost volatility to its customers. Piedmont's hedging activities for the review period in this proceeding resulted in a net economic cost to customers of approximately 13 cents per month. Piedmont did not deviate from its approved plan during the review period. The company uses a deliberative process to maximize the value of its capacity and supply assets when they are not needed to serve Piedmont's customers. This process includes the solicitation of bids for long-term delivered supply sales and extensive market research to establish daily or monthly sales prices. These practices resulted in $4,913,339.88 in secondary marketing credits this year. In summary, my testimony supports the conclusion that Piedmont's gas purchasing policies are prudent and that its review period gas costs were prudently incurred. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brees. Mr. Brees is available for cross-examination questions by the commission.
Commissioner questions.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Thomas.
thank you. Mr. Breeze, appreciate you being here today. So just back on July the 1st, you had the GCRM 152 that went into effect, and for a customer using 100 therms, the cost goes up by about $10. Can you give us a little bit of background on what is behind that, what caused that?
I'm not sure I'm able to answer that right now. I'm not familiar with that.
Okay.
Now, gas prices have increased over the last year. They were, extremely low in last year's hearing, and prices in the market have been trading around $2-3, and now they're in the $3 to $4 range. So we have seen a increase in prices in the market. So that may be contributing to that increase in gas costs.
Okay. Let me ask you about something that's just maybe a little bit off topic here. Have you heard of Project Canary? Are you familiar with Project Canary?
Yes, I have heard of Project Canary.
Okay. And my understanding is that is a program that is dedicated to what they call responsibly sourced gas and with third-party verification. Is that anything that Piedmont is considered utilizing or looking into?
We're currently looking into it, and I'd say we're in the preliminary stages. Piedmont does have some methane reduction strategies and goals and net carbon goals in the future years. And so we are looking at ways to incorporate responsibly sourced gas or certified gas into our supply portfolio. Currently, that type of gas does incur a premium in the market, and we're still following a lowest cost, best cost supply purchasing policy. So we're trying to determine how we want to tackle that going forward. We've met with several suppliers and discussed into what they're doing and how these certifications are going to add up and what they really mean for our consumers. And so, yeah, I imagine in the next few years, we will see some changes where we start incorporating that supply into our portfolio. But at this time, we do not have any of that gas in our portfolio.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's all I had.
Mr. Chairman,
Vice Chair Belzer.
thank you. Good morning, Mr. Breesy.
Good morning.
Mr. Breesy, I believe it was in June, the commission approved a change in the benchmark cost of gas under the GCRM. I think that became effective July 1. I may be messed up on the dates there. But can you give us can you tell us what Piedmont has seen that has led to the increased cost of gas?
Yes. So first off, the last couple of years, natural gas has been at historically low levels, and at some point we figured they would probably bottom out. We've got such an abundant source of supply. There's lots of production onshore, and that drove the price down. And now the demand is starting to catch up with that supply. So we've seen an increase in the last year of natural gas prices, and you're still seeing pretty good production, but you're definitely having an increase in demand, not only from the natural gas side, but you've got the power generation side where a lot more natural gas is being used for the electric generation.
Okay. And in your pre-file testimony, in your summary on page 17, you make a statement that although we believe our policies and procedures are reasonable, we are cognizant of the fact that the natural gas industry is rapidly changing. And then that sentence goes on, and I'm just curious as to What are some of these changes that y'all are seeing and monitoring?
Well, we've seen a lot of, it's become more difficult to get pipeline infrastructure in place. Obviously, we had the cancellation of ACP last year, and that was going to diversify our supply portfolio. So I think the federal regulations are more stringent, and so seeing less pipeline infrastructure being built is also going to increase the supply cost, because we do have access to an abundance amount of onshore shale gas, but getting it to and from the markets with a pipeline infrastructure system is really what's lacking.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Williams.
Commissioner Gaston.
Morning, Mr. Grease.
Morning.
Along the lines of Vice Chair Bell's question, as far as the changes that you see in the industry, coming in the industry, and you referenced the, I guess, supply pipelines, the difficulty in constructing new supply lines. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And did I understand you to say, is that because of additional federal regulations, or what is behind that difficulty?
I think a lot of it has to do with permitting and federal regulations, and you're seeing a lot of pipelines who are able to build new pipelines or expand their system by building an existing right-of-way. And because of the areas that have already been developed, trying to get new pipelines into those developed areas has becoming increasingly difficult.
Okay, from a permitting point of view, but I guess what I'm trying to better understand is have there been additional federal or state regulations difficult because of what? Safety issues, or because of what?
I think it's probably more environmentally driven, of building a new pipeline in a developed area. If you're crossing bodies of water, stream crossings, going through mountains, things like that make it a little more difficult.
Because they are intrastate or interstate, or
I think it's both, from a federal and a state, that the regulations are becoming more strict, and it's getting more difficult to build that new pipeline infrastructure.
okay. But that kind of, and I don't know if you're the person that can answer this, but I was thinking in terms of long-range planning. Are you involved with any of the planning or long-range planning? What constitutes long-range planning for P&G?
So my group is in charge of procuring short-term and long-term supply. Now, Jeff Patton, who will also be testifying today, his group is in charge of procuring long-term capacity and storage contracts, basically new pipeline infrastructure or expansions to existing. And so his group, each year goes through a pretty extensive analysis to determine, how we're growing and how our demand has increased and how we meet that need with capacity and storage.
Okay. Say snapshot now. Existing infrastructure now, existing supply transmission lines now. How far out into the future does that take us? Does that take P&G?
Jeff can probably answer this a little more thoroughly, but I believe the design date goes out 10 years.
10 years is long-range planning for P&G? Is that standard and normal?
Yes.
How long does it take to construct a major supply line, a transmission line?
It depends on whether or not there's existing right of way or whether or not pipelines have to go out and purchase new right of way, how developed an area is that they're building new lines through. So I would say it, could take a few years to.
15 years.
Oh, no. I'm thinking new pipelines, are probably in the within a 5 to 7 is probably when they could be built. If not sooner, if you've got existing right of way.
And if I understood you earlier, you were saying that because of the complexities of permitting on the federal and state environmental level or whatever, that it was more difficult or becoming more difficult to design and install supply lines. In other words, distribution lines or, getting your gas to your customers is one issue. But it seems the big issue is having adequate resource supply to the state. Is that true or false?
That's correct.
So what I'm trying to understand from a long-range planning view, if 10 years is the long-range planning, and does that 5 to 7 years for a supply line include the difficulties of this increased permitting challenge?
Yes, I believe so. And you could have pipelines that are built in just a few years if you've got existing right of way and you're not encountering any of those permitting issues that would be associated with new development.
So the long-range planning of Piedmont Natural Gas, I assume you look at the growth projections, true population projections, and then kind of equate that to gas usage somehow. Is that how that's done?
That's correct. The design day model that Jeff's group prepares does take into account growth across each jurisdiction.
And 10 years is a standard in the industry?
I'm not sure how other companies are viewing their long-term supply and capacity planning, but I would assume that that's probably standard.
But you agree, or do you agree, that the key to long-term growth, long-term security is long-term supply? Is that a fair statement?
Yes, supply and getting it to the end user.
And I'm not claiming to understand, how the gas industry works in great detail. I don't. But if it takes 5 to 7 years to get through the permitting process to construct supply lines, major supply lines, that may or may not be interstate, and the planning period is 10 years, do you think that's the appropriate time frame for long-range planning?
I do. Like I said, some new pipelines can be built much sooner than 5 to 7 years, but I was using that as kind of typically what we've seen as a worst case scenario.
Okay. This is probably a Mr. Patton question on this design day Do you, is that a question for him or for you?
Yes, I would probably say the design day. We work very closely with Jeff's group and we use the final result of the design day to determine how we're going to purchase our supply each year. And so we are using design day, but his group is responsible for running the model each year and coming up with what those numbers are.
Can you help me better understand what design day means?
It's essentially a worst case scenario of what we're forecasting our system to see on a demand, on an extreme cold winter day.
So that would be like on the water side, that'd be like a maximum hour situation. Is that similar? In other words, is that over a 24-hour period or 8-hour period, 1 hour?
Yeah, I think it would be the worst day that we would see demand wise during a peak winter.
And that is based on historical information. And how do you come up with that?
Yes, I'll probably divert that question to Jeff. I think he'll be able to give a much thorough explanation of what all goes into the design day modeling process each year.
So when you come up with a design day, and then you're looking at your long range planning, say 10 years out, which still seems kind of short planning to me. I mean, that would be short-term planning, but nonetheless. Do you take that design day, project it out for 10 years to develop what supply you're going to need, what infrastructure you're going to need, transmission, distribution, and so forth?
Yeah, I think I'll defer that question to Jeff as well.
Okay. Don't let me forget to ask. You've been a big help, and I appreciate it, Mr. Brees. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more commissioner questions for this witness? Hearing none, Mr. Brees, you may step down. Attorney Jeffries, please call your next witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Piedmont would call Mr. Jeff Patton to the stand, please.
Mr. Patton, if you would please take the stand, sir, and pause to be sworn in by our court reporter.
Mr. Patton, if you would raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Patton, could you state your name and business address for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Jeffrey Patton. My business address is 4720 Piedmont Road Drive, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28210.
And you are employed by Piedmont Natural Gas, is that correct?
That's correct.
And what is your position with Piedmont and what are your responsibilities in that position?
I'm the manager of pipeline services and I'm responsible for the planning of our pipeline and storage capacity, as well as the forecasting of our design day needs and forecast for our daily and monthly needs. In addition, I oversee the company's activities at FERC related to interstate pipelines and storage.
Thank you, Mr. Patton. Are you the same Jeff Patton that pre-filed direct testimony in this proceeding on June 2nd, 2021, consisting of 14 pages and exhibits marked as JCP1 through JCP8?
Yes, that's correct.
And was that testimony, were those exhibits prepared by you or under your direction?
Yes, they were.
And do you have any corrections to the pre-filed testimony or your pre-filed exhibits?
No, I do not.
Mr. Patton, if I ask you the same questions that set forth in your pre-filed direct testimony while you're on the stand today, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Piedmont would ask that Mr. Patton's pre-filed direct testimony be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand, and that his exhibits marked JCP1 through JCP8 be identified and entered into evidence.
All right, Mr. Patton, your pre-filed direct testimony will be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand, and exhibits JCP 1 through JCP 8 will be marked as a composite exhibit and entered into the record as hearing exhibit number 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Patton, have you prepared a summary of your pre-filed testimony?
Yes, I have.
Could you provide that to the commission, please?
Sure. My name is Jeff Patton. I'm the manager of pipeline services for Piedmont Natural Gas Company, Inc. I pre-filed direct testimony and exhibits in this proceeding on June 2nd, 2021. The purpose of my direct testimony is to discuss the market requirements of Piedmont's South Carolina customers during the review period in this proceeding, including the projected growth in those markets, the capacity acquisition policies and practices we employ to serve those markets, and the efforts undertaken by Piedmont at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to ensure that interstate transportation and storage services are reasonably priced. As of March 31st, 2021, Piedmont served approximately 155,150 sales and transportation customers in South Carolina. During the review period, Piedmont delivered 64,972,824 decatherms of natural gas to its South Carolina customers. Roughly 93% of those deliveries went to Piedmont's firm market, primarily consisting of residential, small commercial, small industrial, and power generation customers. The remaining 7% of those deliveries were made to Piedmont's interruptible market, primarily consisting of commercial and large industrial customers. My testimony discusses how Piedmont calculated the design day needs of its system for the winter 2020-21 and how Piedmont will calculate the design day requirements for the future periods of winter 2021-22 through the winter 25-26. For winter 2021, Piedmont calculated design day requirements based on a number of factors, including historical weather, historical operating experience, forecasted customer additions, and projected demand. Piedmont then calculated a reserve margin to ensure its ability to provide safe and reliable service to its firm customer base during design day conditions. For the winter 21-22 through winter 25-26, Piedmont methodology used to calculate its design day requirements. Specifically, Piedmont modified its process to develop the total firm sales demand amount for design day, updated the design day temperature from 8.71 to 8.69 degrees Fahrenheit, and updated the design day heating degree day from 56.29 to 56.31. In my testimony, I explained that the revised methodology is a more refined approach to the calculation of design day requirements for firm sales customers, and that this refinement did not significantly impact Piedmont's design day requirements for the future. My testimony also explains that Piedmont acquires incremental capacity to meet its projected growth utilizing the best cost methodology, which is described in greater detail in Mr. Brees' testimony. Piedmont generally seeks to match its capacity acquisitions with the needs of its firm customers by acquiring year-round capacity to serve its base load requirements, storage capacity to serve its seasonal demand, and peaking to serve its peak day needs. My pre-filed direct testimony describes how Piedmont plans to supply its estimated future growth requirements during the next 5 years, beginning with the 2021-22 winter season. Finally, my testimony discusses how Piedmont is routinely involved in matters before the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Piedmont intervenes and actively participates in matters before FERC that could have a material impact on the costs paid by Piedmont's South Carolina customers for upstream transportation and storage capacity.
Thank you, Mr. Patton. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Patton's available for cross-examination questions by the commission.
Commissioner questions for Mr. Patton.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Powers, then Commissioner Caston.
Mr. Patton, good morning. And I guess you're the one that needs the cardigan sweater. I want to ask you, in reading your testimony, you talk about how once people turn the thermostat up, they don't turn it back down like you would hope they would, or that would be good as far as conservation measures. What sort of educational, if any, and conservation information do you provide to customers, or is there any way to monitor and to contact customers and to help them to be more conservation wise as far as their use?
Sure, sure. So as a Piedmont customer myself, I do get, my bill and mail outs, and Piedmont actively sends information to its customers. There's also information posted on Piedmont's website that explains, calculators on how customers can conserve energy saving tips. So I know that the company is actively involved in providing information to its customers on how to conserve energy. But then to your question around, peak usage, yes, we have seen in one of my exhibits, Exhibit 3 does point out from historical basis, over time when you have a significant cold weather event that lasts several days, that initial conservation efforts will usually subside as the customers after a couple of days will turn that thermostat up just, to as they're tired of being cold and just respond in that manner. But I would say that Piedmont is actively providing information to its customers on how to have energy efficiency programs and conservation, especially related to the cost of their bill.
Well, any besides website, and a lot of elderly people, different people may not have internet or use computers. Do you do any sort of media campaign, television, anything that would provide that sort of information?
Yeah, off the top of my head, I'm not sure about media or campaign, although that may be the case. But I do recognize as I still get a paper bill, and there's still information provided in that's mailed out. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Caston.
Thank you, Chairman Williams. Good morning, Mr. Patton.
Good morning.
I guess to follow up on Commissioner Howard's question there, it made me think of something relative to gas heat. My personal experience has been that it heats you up fast. When you turn that gas, it heats you up fast. But when you cut it off, if you had some of the houses like I used to have, it doesn't take long for it to get back cold. Until the mass, the structure is warm, it's really hard to stay warm. All that said, is it possible for like P&G and maybe the electric utilities to work together somehow for, weatherizing homes? Because my experience has been, and what I've seen is that, like I say, it heats up fast, but it dissipates fast if homes aren't weatherized, if they don't have the double pane windows, good insulation in the floor. When you've got wind blowing underneath your house, your attic, it escapes like crazy. It goes out through your receptacles in your walls. I'm not sure, absent that anybody is going to be very successful at conservation. And I would also think that a lot of folks that have those big gas bills can't afford to do that weatherization.
Sure.
Is that a fair assessment?
So yeah, I know the company does provide incentives for type of insulation. I know on electric side as well as that's my background is on electric side. But on Piedmont side as well, I would assume there are programs for incentivizing customers and rebates associated with types of insulation, other things that help that effort, as well as providing information to recognize the benefit of insulation and those type of measures to keep it warm.
Agree. And I think those things are good, but also some of the homes and folks that come to my mind is a rebate doesn't help them a lot because they don't have the initial resources to do anything to get a rebate. And oftentimes a lot of those homes were rented, and the owner of those homes wasn't so concerned because he didn't have to pay those gas bills. our electric bills. So I'm just basically stating the obvious that you really already know, and it is a quandary for everyone. But perhaps if in conjunction with the electric utilities and whatever other groups, perhaps we could start thinking, I hate to say out of the box, but maybe thinking, trying to determine the root of the problem and maybe trying to start there rather than the same old, same old. But that's just an opinion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand your point. I mean, I think that's a interesting topic. I'm not really probably the best person to talk about the ins and outs and implications of that, but you know, definitely can see what you're saying.
I understand. Mr. Brees was very helpful, but he did pass a lot of these questions on to you. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna follow up on some of these with you. That's okay.
Yeah, no problem.
And to make sure I understood the design day issue, that is the 24-hour highest demand, and that is determined how? How do you determine that design day?
Yeah, that's right. You're right. It is the 24-hour period that we obviously as a gas utility, our peak is in the winter with heating load, and so you know we develop our design day, and that is just it. That is the criteria which we design our system around, so that we're able to meet our customers' needs during that cold weather event and that peak day. And so for us, a design day is based on a temperature that we have observed. It refers back to January of 1985. It's the coldest average day since then. And so we use that day as a benchmark on a temperature basis. And so on that day, our observable temperature, weighted average across our system was approximately 0.7 degrees Fahrenheit. And so, you know, with that average temperature, that translates to a heating degree day when you do the conversion. But in short, it's a peak day. And so we look at historical usage, actual usage over the past 5 winters, and develop a model to predict what our usage would be at that design day conditions. And so using that criteria and projecting what our demand would be, we make sure from a supply perspective that we have enough natural gas capacity and storage to bring that gas to our city gate and distribute it to our customers. And so that's essentially what a design day is.
Okay, so in essence, if I'm understanding you correctly, you don't necessarily just go back to meter records and, you know, what's the most gas that went through the meter, but you look at the coldest temperature of record over some period.
Mm-hmm.
I assume since you've been keeping records, because if it happened before, it'll happen again, only worse. That's what I was always told. And then you take the historical meter records, that coldest temp of record, and I guess you have some kind of algorithm or whatever, and you take all that, put it in a soup, and come up with a way to determine based on other temperatures that you experience. Is that a fair assumption or understanding?
Yeah, that's essentially at a high level. You're right. We look at historical usage and the data at the different temperatures and you know, heating degree days associated with that actual usage. And then we take that data, run a regression, a curve or a line to interpret what that peak would be at that highest point for 56.3 heating degree days. So that's essentially what.
Not 56.4, but 56.3.
That's right. That's right.
Understand. Now, is that design day, is that projected out to the end of the planning period? First of all, you know, when I asked Mr. Brees about long-range planning, what did that mean to P&G? and he said 10 years. Do you agree with that? Is that the long-range planning period of P&G?
Well, we plan for a lot of factors, a lot of time periods, but from a design day perspective, we develop what we anticipate the design day for this upcoming winter, and then we apply a projected growth forecast from our sales group. And so, we use that forecasted growth to apply it to that peak design day and grow it out over a 10-year period. We are able to do it longer, but for us, it's a 10-year period is reasonable, for our planning purposes, recognizing our overall supply portfolio. And as we, look to see, are there any gaps to that, or is there any needs, then, we recognize the time period involved for contracting for new interstate transportation or storage or other facilities, and build that lead time in there as we're looking ahead at future needs.
So I guess what I'm trying to understand, it sounds like maybe you do it, but you don't do it, or you do it, but you got different plans or schedules. Say 20 years or 25 or whatever, 20 years. Does P&G look at potential growth or demand projections 20 years down the road, or is it just in 10-year increments?
Yeah, so we do look at more a 10-year time period. I think once you get out beyond that, the information that you have to project demand and usage, we work with our sales team, and they pull in factors such as economic factors, employment, what they're seeing in the individual territories, and to the extent that information is available, and we use that. But once I would say you get out to 20, 30 years, your forecast is only good as the information you have to develop that. And so, for us, a 10-year planning horizon we feel like is a reasonable from a supply capacity portfolio standpoint, given our current position. Have a couple exhibits that kind of lay that out for the future periods, but essentially, a 10-year horizon is a reasonable from a planning perspective.
It's interesting. It seems like I heard some of the electrical utilities say something very similar. And again, I'm not claiming to, know your industry or electrical. But from a practical planning point of view, to me, that, that seems like a mighty short-term view. No, you nor I can say with 100% certainty what's going to happen in the next 5 minutes. Correct?
That's right.
So we don't know what's going to happen in 10 years, and we don't know what's going to happen in 20 years. But that's the purpose of planning and trying to develop good projections and good data. Because if I understand it correctly, let's say we use a 10-year planning period, long-range planning period, and is it what Mr. Bree said relative to getting the permitting and construction of a, say, supply line, major transmission line or whatever, a 5 to 7 year period? That's fair assumption.
Yeah, and just to clarify, what I believe Bruce was referring to, and what I deal with in my responsibilities, we're talking the interstate pipelines and storage, that bring gas to our city gates, not really necessarily looking at the permitting and timeline for projects on Piedmont system. So just to kind of clarify, we are talking about interstate pipelines, but yes, we have seen the lead times for permitting and approval process and construction process for interstate pipeline and storage projects have increased over the last 5 years, due to a lot of the factors that Todd mentioned, we are seeing a lot of scrutiny at both the federal level from the FERC, as well as interested parties, interveners from the environmental groups that put a lot of scrutiny on both the state and federal permitting process. And we've seen that played out in the judicial process with, court orders and, different rulings that impact the permitting process as well as regulatory approvals.
Well, I can't see in future any better than you can, but do you anticipate that getting any better, maybe even worse?
I don't anticipate it getting any better. It's going again. I think we've seen in the news with a lot of some other interstate pipeline projects and the scrutiny. I do think it's definitely here to stay, and wouldn't anticipate it getting any easier. But I do say that Piedmont is well positioned with the assets we have, and we're taking into account any of those additional timelines and approvals and the decisions that we're making around our supply portfolio.
Well, if you may be, I just don't see it. Because as I think about these things and what you just said, it's probably not going to get easier to permit and construct a line, especially an interstate line. And I'd asked Mr. Brees earlier, snapshot now, the existing infrastructure you have now, the existing supply lines, the existing supply source, the existing transmission lines, how far in the future would that take you?
So right now, just to touch on a couple things, in my testimony, we recognize that, we have done some recent increasing of the capacity output of our Huntersville facility. And then, we're in the process of bringing online our Robinson LNG facility. That's LNG tank on our system, and anticipate that being, ready for this upcoming winter. And so, Piedmont's decisions around those assets are something that, it's within our system, and it's not an interstate type project. So I think that has been something that we point to, as you can see, my testimony exhibits that provides, Piedmont security of supply access for our design day. And, from a system standpoint, we do look out long-term, both on internal for our system and as well as a supply portfolio. As you can see in my exhibit, that it shows through 2026 that, Piedmont has sufficient supply and capacity to meet our customers' needs on a design day.
So 5 years into the future.
That's right. That's what's filed in the testimony. That's right.
I'm not remotely trying to suggest how P&G or any utility, anybody should do their business. I'm not. I'm trying to understand better, because I come from a different, background. That long-range planning is long-range planning. To me, the things we're talking about here are very short-term to me, but and that's me. If you do planning beyond what you're saying, maybe you just don't want to share it, and that's something different. And I'm not trying to be obstinate about it, but as I think in terms of, we just got to talking about possibly 5 to 7 years for a line, construction permit to completion, and then a 10-year planning period. So by the time you construct the line, basically you have anywhere from 3 to 5 years before it's obsolete, and your planning is obsolete, and you've spent a great deal of resources to do this permitting and construction. And we just got through saying that the process probably isn't going to get easier from a regulatory point of view.
Mhm.
And in 10 years, places you want to run a line, for example, there was this road, Highway 291, that was 2-lane blacktop that nothing was on, a bunch of peach farm, and it was no big deal. And then they made it 4-lane, 6-lane, all kind of industry came up, and running that major water line got very expensive. So it seems that in a 10-year period, there's the high possibility the PNG is going to experience the same things. You're going to have stuff being installed and put where you might want to run some line. And regulations and permitting is not going to get easier. So I'm really struggling to understand how a 10-year planning period and 5 to 7 years to construct a line is sound logic and reason, reasonable, prudent for investing money that might be obsolete in 3 to 5 years, or you're going to need to do it again. I'm not trying to tell folks how to do it, but I really think maybe it would be wise to look further down the road and dig one ditch one time instead of try to do it again in 10 years. But does that make sense at all?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. And one thing I point out in my testimony is that, Piedmont, when we're contracting for new capacity or storage, or even in our Robinson LNG facility, that those capacity additions are going to be in blocks. You're never going to exactly match. And so we recognize that, the capacity additions that we do subscribe for, there's going to be a period of time where, there's some growth over time where our growth projections, just as you mentioned, you're not say I need of 50,000 decatherms a day on a peak basis. You may not be able to contract for just 50,000 a day. As you add facilities, you're going to have, they're going to come in chunks based on what the market's out there, the best cost philosophy. And so when we acquire those capacity and we build this facility, we recognize, we're putting those facilities in service and recognize there's just growth associated with that to grow over time. So, I wouldn't say we're taking a short-sighted view on our planning process. We do have plans that extend for 10 years, but on a design date basis. But, the company overall, does take a long-term view to ensure that the capacity additions are, timely and cost-effective and do, provide security of supply to our customers on a design day.
That makes sense. And if I'm understanding you too, if you have, storage facilities, locations or properties identified, then if you could fill those storage facilities during off-peak time, summer or whatever, that could, take care of things in the future. But that said, I sense that perhaps PNG and maybe the other utilities do have some longer views of things, but for whatever reason, prefer not to share those things. And I suspect it could be, and I would understand this too, you wouldn't want everybody to know that because it could affect cost of that property down the road or a host of things like that. I get that, but sure would eliminate a lot of my questions if I knew more of those things, understood more of those things, and saw more of those things. That's all that said. You've been very gracious, answered my questions, I think, to the best of your ability, and think about some of the things we talked about. And let's see where we go from here. Thank you.
I appreciate your questions.
All right. Any more questions for Mr. Patton? Commissioner Thomas?
Thank you. Sorry about that. I turned my microphone off instead of on. Appreciate you being here and helping us today. And so I had a question about the Atlantic Coast Pipeline and the 160,000 decatherms per day that you're expecting to come online in 2022. So it looks like most of that capacity is going to be replaced by storage from Hardy and Columbia Gas. Is that correct?
So that's a good question. So yes, as you're aware of the cancellation of ACP, we initially have been looking at alternatives. When you look at the design date portfolio for the near term, we have the addition of Robinson LNG providing 200,000 decatherms a day of peaking needs, but also over time, our growth and need in eastern part of North Carolina, as well as just our overall system needs. We're looking at alternatives and reviewing those alternatives and looking to move forward with an alternative from ACP.
And in terms of the cost, I would assume that storage is much more expensive than transportation. Is that correct?
Well, there's a couple things that go with storage, costs. Storage in itself has a cost, but also there's a cost to transport that storage to our city gates. And so when we're evaluating our alternatives, we do recognize there's the value of storage and the service that it provides, but we also have to look at the path and needs to get it from that storage facility to our different city gates. And so it's hard to say, in general, if storage is cheaper than, transportation. It depends on, of course, the facility and the different pipeline contracts you would look to bring that gas to us and your alternatives. But they're linked, given the need to bring it to our system.
Okay. So is firm capacity available elsewhere? My understanding is that firm capacity is pretty hard to come by these days. Is that correct?
That's right. Obviously it's pipeline specific, but long-term firm transportation on Transco specifically, it is hard to come by, given just the market and the need and the growth in natural gas usage over the last few years.
And with regard to Transco, are there expansion projects going on with Transco or any of the other lines that are in existence with existing right-of-ways, or are they pretty much built out to the extent that they can be?
There are opportunities for expansion projects, with Transco. They are constantly evaluating their system and looking for ways to leverage their existing right-of-way and facilities to provide incremental service to its customers. And so I would say that, yes, there are opportunities that the company can look at, and others as well, for expansions of Transco system.
Okay. And you mentioned the Robeson plant and that it's anticipated to be completed this summer. What is the status of that at this point?
Robinson LNG facility, the construction, as I understand, is complete. It's going through kind of the pre-commissioning testing phase, with anticipating being able to start, receiving and liquefying gas, to start filling that tank over the next few months as it readies to get filled by the winter.
Okay. So sounds like you won't be able to start filling that until closer to the end of the off-season, so to speak, the peak season for filling an LNG facility, but you still think that's going to be full by the winter peak period?
By the way, yes, sir. We would anticipate starting, as I understand it, filling Robinson in probably the September, or late August, September timeframe, with continuing fill it and have it filled by the end of the year.
So where is that plant located?
It's in Robinson County, North Carolina.
And so does that have connections to South Carolina customers?
It does, in the fact it's not a direct physical connection. The on-system LNG that Piedmont has provides the ability for Piedmont to use that natural gas supply and free up capacity that would otherwise have gone to North Carolina to use its existing contracts on Transco to provide gas in South Carolina. As you may or may not be aware, we dispatch our Carolinas. We run our whole North Carolina and South Carolina system as one. And so, being able to utilize LNG and distribute it in North Carolina, like I said, frees up that capacity and able to use existing capacity to service South Carolina customers and provide that benefit to South Carolina.
Okay, so what about the other storage facilities? Are they up at their normal levels at this time of the year, and they're on schedule to be full at the normal winter heating time frames?
Yes, that's more Mr. Breese's area, but as I understand it, yes, we're on target to be all our storage facilities to be full in time for the peak season.
And are some of the storage facilities, the LNG plants, getting some age on them, getting pretty old?
That's a good question. I think some of the facilities, again, don't quote me on this, but may have been around since the 80s. But Piedmont is constantly reviewing those facilities, making sure that they're well maintained and ready for service. So I think those facilities have a very long useful life.
And do they have to go through recertification process or anything like that, or is it kind of up to the company to keep them up and maintain them and make the decisions, or do they have to go before someone for recertification?
I'm not the best person to answer that question, but I am confident that whatever requirements are necessary to make sure those facilities are fit for service, that the company takes those steps.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Sure.
Any more questions for Mr. Patton? All right. Attorney Jeffries, do you have any redirect?
I do not have any redirect from Mr. Patton, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Patton, you may step down from the witness stand.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, before we move on to the ORS, I just want to ensure that I have moved all the pre-marked evidence or pre-marked exhibits into evidence. I believe that the chair has ruled that Ms. Tomlinson's exhibits were admitted as a composite exhibit number 2, and that Mr. Patton's exhibits were composite exhibit number 3, but I just wanted to make sure that I had done that and we had taken care of that detail for the record.
Attorney Jeffries, I believe you have, sir. I'm tracking MBT 1 and 2. I'm also tracking JCP 1A, 1B, 2, 3, 4A, 4B, 4C, 5A, 5B, 5C, 6, 7, and 8.
Thank you, sir. That in that case, that concludes the presentation of Piedmont's case.
All right. Office of Regulatory Staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. ORS calls Mr. Daniel Sullivan.
Mr. Sullivan, if you would please take the stand and pause to be sworn in by our court reporter.
Mr. Sullivan, if you would raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Sullivan, would you please state your full name, business address, and occupation?
My name is Daniel Sullivan. I'm employed by the South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff as the Director of the Audit Department. My business address is 1401 Main Street, Columbia, South Carolina, 29201.
And are you the same Daniel Sullivan who prepared and pre-filed 10 pages of direct testimony and 3 exhibits, which were DFS1, DFS2, and DFS3, in this case on June 16th, 2021?
Yes, I am.
Do you have any changes to that testimony or those exhibits?
No, I do not.
Mr. Chairman, we ask that the 10 pages of direct testimony of ORS witness Daniel Sullivan filed on June 16th be entered into the record as given orally from the stand, and that his 3 exhibits, DFS1, DFS2, and DFS3, be marked for identification and entered into the record as a composite hearing exhibit?
Absolutely, ma'am. Daniel Sullivan's pre-filed direct testimony will be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand. Mr. Sullivan's 3 exhibits marked DFS 1, 2, and 3 will be entered into the record as a composite exhibit, and I think that's hearing exhibit number 4.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Mr. Sullivan, have you prepared a summary of your testimony?
Yes, I have.
Would you please present that now?
Sure. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. The purpose of my testimony is to set forth the findings resulting from ORS's examination of the company's purchase gas deferred account, storage inventory activity, and hedging account activity for the period April 1st, 2020 through March 31st, 2021. ORS has included the results of our examination in audit exhibits DFS1 through DFS3. Audit exhibit DFS1 presents, for each month, the components which contribute to the company's over-under collection in the purchase gas deferred account for the review period. Audit exhibit DFS2 summarizes the company's gas storage inventory activity during the review period. Audit exhibit DFS3 details the results of the company's hedging activity for the review period, as well as the cumulative loss since the inception of the program. Based on our examination, it is the opinion of ORS that the overcollection balance in Piedmont's purchase gas deferred account at March 31st, 2021 of $2,389,099.67 shown on company witness Tomlinson's exhibit MBT1 is accurately stated.
Does that conclude your summary?
Yes, it does.
Mr. Chairman, the witness is available for questions by the commissioners.
Commissioner, questions for Mr. Sullivan? All right, Mr. Sullivan, you may step down for the witness stand. Attorney Hammonds, please call your next witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. ORS calls Mr. Michael Seaman Wynn.
Mr. Michael Seaman Wynn, if you would please take the witness stand and pause to be sworn in by our court reporter.
Mr. Seaman Wynn, if you would raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Would you please state your full name, business address, and occupation?
My name is Michael Seaman Wynn. My business address is 1401 Main Street, Columbia, South Carolina. I'm employed by the Office of Regulatory Staff as the Deputy Director of Energy Operations.
And did you prepare and pre-file 9 pages of direct testimony in this case on June 16th?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes to that testimony?
No, I did not.
Mr. Chairman, we ask that the 9 pages of direct testimony of ORS witness Michael Seaman Nguyen filed on June 16th, 2021 be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Mr. Michael Seaman Wynn's direct testimony, pre-filed direct testimony, will be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have you prepared a summary of your testimony?
Yes, I have.
Would you please provide that summary for the commission?
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. The purpose of my direct testimony is to present ORS's findings and recommendations regarding the review and examination of Piedmont Natural Gas Company during the review period. ORS found the company's natural gas purchasing policies to be reasonable. Second, ORS found that Piedmont managed its hedging program in compliance with prior commission orders. Third, ORS determined Piedmont adhered to its commission-approved GCRM tariff. Fourth, ORS found that the company is prepared to meet its obligations for the upcoming winter's projected firm customer requirements. Subsequent to the filing of my direct testimony, a settlement agreement was entered into between the company and the ORS in this proceeding. The settlement agreement is offered as a fair, reasonable, and full resolution of the parties' issues in this proceeding. Further, ORS believes that the settlement agreement is in the public interest of South Carolina and respectfully requests that the Commission approve the settlement agreement as requested.
Does that conclude your summary?
Yes, it does.
Mr. Chairman, this witness is available for questions.
Questions for Mr. Michael Seaman Wynn? All right, Mr. Seaman Wynn, you may step down from the witness stand.
Thank you.
Parties, are there any matters we need to discuss before we adjourn?
Nothing further from ORS, Mr. Chairman.
Nothing for Piedmont, Mr. Chairman.
Has there been a discussion regarding proposed orders? I'm going to turn the hearing over to General Counsel Wes Singer Hill at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Normally, proposed orders traditionally in this type of docket have traditionally come 1 week after the hearing. So if the parties are willing to provide an order no later than July 22nd, which is 1 week from today, parties, counsel for Piedmont and counsel for ORS, does that sound acceptable?
I believe we can
Yes, ma'am.
accommodate that.
Okay.
Ma'am.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, there being no further matters before the commission with regard to any preliminary matters or any other issues.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.